In this module, I will dive into View Free and explain what changed with View Free and which new features we have. Now, I want to start with one important note. View version 3 is the latest version of View, but there is a but. If you visit the official GitHub repository of View version 3, which at the moment is the View Next repository, not View, the View Next repository, you'll find the release notes there. You'll also find them linked below the video. And the interesting thing here is that they follow a phased release process. Now, what that means is that Vue Core, the core framework, is finished, it's stable, it's out there, but some other parts of the framework, for example, the router and Vuex integration in the DevTools, so some other packages and things that belong to the framework and to the Vue ecosystem are not final yet. That's why the Vue team decided to go with this phased release process, where for the moment, if you, for example, visit Vue.js.org, you still end up in the Vue 2 docs there. So you still start with Vue 2 there. Also, if you install Vue via npm, so if you run npm install, you also see that at the moment you get Vue version 2 on that latest tag. You need to run npm install Vue at next to get that real latest version. And you need to visit v3.vue.js.org to get to the Vue free version of the official website and documentation. Nonetheless, Vue version 3 is final, and the version you should learn right now, the version you should dive into right now, you just should be aware of this phased release process, and that all parts, like the web page and the npm install latest version, will only be switched to Vue free at the end of the year. That's the plan, at least, as you can see here. So that's something to be aware of. Nonetheless, now is the time to learn Vue free. And if you're just starting with Vue, I would recommend that you do that with Vue version 3 because it is stable and it is the future of Vue. And the parts which still get some work might not matter to you. You can find the next steps on which the Vue team focuses here. And none of these parts should have a strong impact on you if you're just getting started with Vue at the moment. So with that, let's now explore what changed with Vue free and what's new. Now, the good news is that not a lot of things changed, and what you learned for Vue 2 generally still applies. There aren't any major breaking changes that would force you to relearn everything. That is not the case. But there are a couple of changes and a couple of new features you should be aware of. I will highlight all important changes you should be aware of in this module though. So let's start with the changes. Here I will just highlight the most important changes, which will likely affect everyone, or at least a lot of people. For an exhaustive list of all changes, no matter how big or small they are, and all new features, definitely check out the official migration guide, which you also find attached to this video. Now, the changes I'm going to list here will also all be shown in detail throughout this video. One change that will affect everyone is that you now create your Vue instances, your Vue apps, differently than before. The syntax changed, and therefore you will need to change this in your apps as well, but changing it is simple, as you will see. In addition, the data option now must always be a method. It's no longer allowed to be just an object. And another change that will affect everyone is related to how you register components, directives, and third-party modules. This will now also work a bit differently, as you will see, but updating this and changing this will also be simple. If you're using transitions in your app, the transition component, CSS class name changed. The -enter class is now -enter from, and I'll show this in an example as well. And that's almost it when it comes to just Vue. As I mentioned, check the official migration guide for all minor changes as well, but these are the most important changes you should definitely know. Now, if you're using the Vue router, there we now also create the router differently and transitions with the router. So if you have animations for switching pages, that also works differently now. For Vuex, it generally works as you learned it, but we now create our store differently. So these are the changes, and I'll cover them with concrete examples throughout the video. We also got a couple of new features, which I'll cover. We got two minor but nice to have changes, a teleport component and support for fragments, and I'll explain both, what it is and why and how we use it in this video, of course. The biggest new feature which was added with Vue 3 is the new composition API, which, and this is important, is 100% optional. You can use it to replace the options API, so you can use it to build your components differently. Instead of using data, watch, methods, and compute it, you can use something else. But it is optional. It'll not replace the options API. You can use it, but you don't have to. And I'll also dive into that in detail, of course. And then, kind of a new feature, we got better TypeScript support. You could always use TypeScript with Vue, but since Vue 3 was internally rewritten from scratch and uses TypeScript internally, it now has better support. Now, using TypeScript is still optional, and at the moment, at least, I'm not using it for most Vue projects, but if you want to use it, you get better support. So that's the overview. With that, let's dive into the concrete examples.